are easing into Friday. Hello, New Haven, and welcome back to Arts Respond on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, New Haven. I'm your host, Lucy Gellman, and I'm really excited to be here in physical space. We're trying to do more of this because I like actually seeing folks face to face. And my guests today, I'm so excited, are Luciana McClure-Lewis. Yeah, I'm getting used to that, y'all. And Sarah Fritchey, and we are two of the original Nasty Women, and two nasty women who I'm so grateful to spend in time with. And we are in the soon to open Nasty Women 8th annual?
Seventh
annual. Okay, I don't do math, y'all.
I'm like
Exhibition, Pillbox View, coming together when things fall apart, which runs from March 8th through the 22nd of this year. And it is at Creative Arts Workshop, which is on 80 Audubon Street. I'm super excited to talk about this exhibition, to talk about the growth and genesis and transitions that Nasty Women has been through. So let's hop right in. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and for being here, and I don't know, for staying nasty. I feel like even the term nasty. So for folks who are listening, just if you are not familiar with the term nasty woman or the genesis of that term, it of course came out of a 2016 debate in which Donald Trump referred to Hillary Clinton way back when the two of them were running against each other for president as a nasty woman. And I have lots of thoughts and feelings about Hillary Clinton, but I don't think of her as particularly nasty. But in the wake of that, all of these folks, I think, sort of took the term and thought about what can we do with this as a reclamation, particularly during Donald Trump's first presidency. So let's hop right into Hillbox View and talk about the birth of this show and the decision to do this show in a backdrop that I think is safe to say feels maybe increasingly dystopian.
Yes. Well, I think we kind of took a 2-year break from doing exhibitions, right? So for us, it was kind of starting a new show. It was a little bumpy, but also figuring out, what does community need at this moment, right? What is the call? What should it say? How much should it communicate to this particular administration? But also, I think a lot of it was, we are in a moment of uncertainty. We don't know where we're heading, between the ongoing genocide in Palestine, now this presidency and everything that it's been taken away from us every day. More and more our freedoms are stripped away. It just felt that, again, we're revisiting a little bit of the moment from 2017 of this urgency to create a space where people can come together. They can think about, that art is so important. Art is a language that connects us, that can invite us to imagine another future or another possibility, or another way of being with one another. But I think Sarah can talk a little more about also the actual title of the show.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I first read this title, I thought, okay, this is enigmatic and weird, and I love it. And I love a good subtitle. It's yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it.
Yeah. No, I love that you started off this conversation with language and this kind of question, is Hillary Clinton actually nasty?
No, she's a lot of things. I don't actually think she's nasty.
She makes a three-piece suit. She's pretty buttoned up and pretty on the ball and a manager of people and projects. So I agree with you. I don't think there's a lot of messiness there, and there's definitely a sort of intergenerational connection to women in a business suit running things.
Yeah.
So I agree. I don't think she's that nasty, but what a freaking compliment to be called nasty by Donald Trump. Because me with that insignia is that you're someone that Donald Trump doesn't like. And I'm like, call me nasty. I want that title. I represent and believe in everything that is bipolar opposite to you. And I think that is what this show calls for. And this movement of the nasty movement calls for is
a reclaiming of that term, not even to resuscitate it from the dustbin, because we're proud to be in Donald Trump's dustbin. Get out of here. Like, we don't represent you. We are self-determined, self-defined. And if you're, if the person that is your villain is nasty, then I'm nasty.
Great. And let's talk about, I mean, one of the things that stood out to me and has long stood out to me about the Nasty Women process is it's unjuried and uncensored. And so immediately you're breaking down, for folks who don't know, sort of like art gallery speak. Often when you hear juried exhibition, the subtext is supposed to be, oh, this is a good show, quote unquote.
Right.
There's something, that people assume is virtuous or better about a show if it's juried. And so immediately you're tearing down that barrier to access, right? So let's talk about that. And then I want to get into talking about some of the art. We are surrounded by over 100 works of art, which is a really amazing thing.
Yeah. I think like the field of art history, its production, commissioning, its investment in the production of it, its conservation is grounded in selection and gatekeeping.
Yeah.
It has always been, or at least within the Western European canyon that we've inherited by being an exhibiting space in New England, a place of honor, privilege, esteem that has so much investment into that sort of like intellectual capital piece. It exists. We're not outside of the bounds of that. And guess what? There's people in the show that are actually globally known, that are bedrocks of work that's being made in 2025 in this region. And there are people that are exhibiting here for the first time. So I would say this open call represents a willingness to let go of this hierarchy that's built within the arts. That is the reason for some people to participate in certain shows, and to say art is a tool that we can use to come together. It's a tool that we can use to collectively find action and voice and meaning and be bigger than just the one person in this.
I also want to talk about some of the art, and I don't want to, I'll let y'all pick and choose because I'm just still getting familiar with these wonderful, although I do want to shout out, we are, if people can see it, we're in front of Sarah Fallman Flores's Vessel of Life. It's from 2018, the mixed media work with welded steel rods, chicken wire burlap, and handmade paper. And I was really excited. I think, Lucy, you gravitated towards, mom brain is real, y'all. This is 3 moms, so it might go off the whatever, but off the rails. You gravitated towards this piece, and I love it in the background. And one thing I said, before we were on mic, but it's true, like, titties are magical, y'all. And so that's part of the show. Part of the show is joyful, and there are parts that are bittersweet, and even like more bitter than sweet. So I'd love to get into, some of the works that are really speaking to you, especially because I've walked past the gallery a couple of times this week and seen you, hard at work in here.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many wonderful pieces, and I think we were talking about some of the pieces that already gravitated to us. And I definitely think about the chair that we were talking about, which is by Becky.
I would love to talk about the chair.
Let's see, what page is that? Oh, Becky Bailey. Here, I found it. So it's called Ceremonial Chair of Support and Receptivity, right? So, and we were talking a little bit before, right? How this is a personal piece, because it's the story of this chair that belonged to the grandmother of the artist, Becky. And, when her grandmother was aging and had to be moved into a care facility, the chair remained.
Yeah.
And she was like, no, maybe I'm going to get rid of this chair now. And she put it in her curb and no one took it. Right. And it almost feels like this really powerful narrative, right? This idea that sometimes we're trying to get rid of something, but then there's an invitation like, no, maybe we need to sit with this a little longer, right? But also this idea of like that objects are not just objects, right? They hold up memory, they tell a story, and it does for the artist. And when the chair was when she brought it back inside, she was thinking about the process. She started researching about the process of like transitioning between, being here and, and passing. And throughout the process of researching, she found a lot of different ideas of like rituals around the death and loss and dying rituals as well. And she decided to she was thinking about also the act of like the people that were taking care of her grandmother, right, through her final days. And this idea of like what we don't see, right? We don't always witness the labor that goes into caring for someone, right? But also that, so much about that transition, I think we mentioned before, Sarah, was like, people don't want to be alone, right? But also in this, what do you call the hospice? The hospice, right? Hospice care is, the whole point is that people don't have to be alone. And throughout this thinking and this research, she decided to sew all these hands and feet, to kind of create a visual representation of all the care and all the people that took to take care of her grandmother, right, through the end of her life. And I think, to me, not only it's powerful to see the piece, right, not all the hands and all the feet, because there are many, but also that the artist invites people to sit in a chair, right? And I think that was a really exciting thing when we reached out to her. It's like, can people sit in this piece, right? And I think this invitation invites us to actually experience, that collective embrace, all these hands and feet of people that take to care for someone. So I am particularly moved by that piece. Sorry, it was a very long time.
Please don't apologize. It's 3 women. We're all gonna apologize too much.
Storytellers.
To each other.
I'm not sorry. No, I really, the thing that always gets me is performance. I love participatory work, especially in an activist space, in an activist show like this one. You can't sell a performance. It's not for sale. It's ephemeral.
That's right.
It only is activated when people come together. So I'll mention one of my favorite pieces in the show of over 100 artists is by Howard Allison. He has an incredibly long career of making installation pieces that involve a sort of participatory action of imbuing or eating something to create a performative relic that then becomes something that can be on display. For this show, he conceived of a piece called Watermelon Works. And the watermelon for him has always been this symbol of African-American stereotyping that has been reclaimed by a Black and brown population as a symbol of oppression and resistance, and recently has been taken up by the Palestinian people who are experiencing their genocide right now, also as a protest piece, as a symbol of resistance. He calls to mind within that framework and that struggle, women's struggles through the performance, which is made up of 7 watermelons placed around the gallery, and an invitation at the opening reception for anyone who comes to eat a slice of watermelon that he's going to cut and deliver, have at stations, and then you spit the seeds into these little canisters that are placed around the gallery. And in this seed dropping, we're seeding something new, a moment of solidarity, but also a moment of contamination. What is it to swap spit and to put your spit into the same container as someone else? That's nasty, right? And that's like my favorite part of the aesthetic of this show is like, there is not this sense of white cube sterility. It's very populated by objects, by materiality, by bodies, in an unrelenting way.
Yeah, totally. And I think this year, I don't know if it's, to me, it feels like more than in years past, people really talking about, also about health, and not just health in the term of like menstruation, birth, menopause, but recognizing that like the whole woman, and also that until women's health is in a good place in this country, which it appears not to be going in that direction, no one's health is going to be in a good place in this country.
100%. I would say, as soon as you say health, I think about this piece to the right of us, which is an installation by Nadine Nelson. That is a commentary on the need for rest and relaxation, and this concept that rest is resistance. It is a idea the Nat Collective seed.
Oh,
Yeah, Trisha Hersey.
Trisha Hersey, that is about how do we unshackle ourselves from the entrapments of capitalism, which is the system that we're living within, which tells us if we work really hard, then we have opportunity to succeed. And if we don't work really hard, then we actually don't have the same amount of economic security, which then when we think about, well, where does our healthcare system come from? It comes from our employers. So we don't have physical security and we don't have access to psychological security. And it is a system that we're swimming in that we can't avoid, but it has shifted our mindsets to tell ourselves to never stop working. And so this moment, especially when you're in a place of activism, or you're a person who is constantly being pushed down by a system of never stop working, leads to what it's designed to do: kill us. Literally kill us. Through means of insecurity or uncertainty, or just through the wearing out of our bodies. And so this piece here is, which the screen can shift, but has like literal pillows in the ground, a chaise lounge, rugs, 12 photographs of incredible Black female leaders who have led the liberation movement, and then quotes by them with an invitation to imagine our futures.
Yeah. And I should say it's next to a suite. This is why y'all just have to come. In some ways, it would be great if we could rotate the screen, but in some ways, it's just come to the show. Please come. St. Parks Workshops on Audubon Street. It runs from March 8th through the 22nd. But it's also next to this beautiful I don't know what you call lines. It's not like a diptych or a collage. Yeah, of from the Bloodroot Experience, which is the project of Rachel Lou Ballard and a lot of very brilliant collaborators, and then also a piece from Nico Oboro, who most people in New Haven may know as a curator, but she actually began her career, started as a photographer, and it's still just like this explosively creative and talented mind. And to have these pieces and other pieces in the gallery that are like very much in conversation with each other. And specifically, it's like, I don't know, there's this corner in which bodies are protected, and specifically women's bodies are protected in a very beautiful way, like protected, cared for, nourished in a very beautiful and thoughtful way, which I love. I don't want to cut you off, Sarah, if you're
no.
Yeah, so I also want to talk about the genesis of Nasty Women, because we are in this moment that, you know, we said this before we were recording on radio. Like, I think for a lot of people, there was a groundswell of excitement when Joe Biden backed out and said, I'm going to make space for someone, even though he gave that someone 100 days. Which is a crazy short period of time. And so when Democrats say that they're not to blame, it's kind of not true, but that's a different episode of the show. Maybe we'll have someone on just talk about political science and political history. But this is a very different show than what you were presenting in the beginning of 2017, in March of 2017.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if both of you could talk about that. And Sarah, maybe I'll hop to you first, or do you want me to?
I mean, I've been talking so much, you talk.
Okay, sure.
I think like in the 2017 show was, I mean, there were so many things happening. I think the reason we started, I think it's the realization that the person was political, right? Which is like something that we always hear about, as sort of like this like chant from feminist movement, right? The person's political, but we don't quite understand what that means. And I remember experiencing that through the first Trump administration, right? Being from Brazil, being a mother, and just listening to his policies, listening to his rhetoric, what he's going to do, and suddenly realizing that everything that my parents, you know, took on, all their literally sacrifices to give us a better life, it was going to be taken away. But it wasn't just that, right? I also had children. So it was like, so that was going to impact them too. So it wasn't just about my life, it was about my children's lives, and also recognizing that it was impacting people that I loved and care about, right? And just feeling that need that, like, you know, how can we do nothing, right? How can we just watch as our rights are taken away? And but also, like, I think as artists, we don't think, or we're not always aware that art can really be what unites or brings people together or invites us to imagine that something else is possible, right? And that art is actually a language that can communicate, right? In ways that sometimes words might fail. So I think that was the very beginning of it, but also looking at this very concept of the nasty woman, right? It was kind of like we invited people to say, well, are you a nasty woman, or what does it mean, right? So we're looking at that subjectivity of that idea while looking at the call that initiated in Knockdown Center in New York. And we're like, no, maybe bringing that to New Haven, right? But I think now, 7 years later, there is some revisiting of the sentiment of the Trump administration the first time, but there is so much more that is happening right now, right? I think we've been witnessing, ongoing genocide in Palestine. We've been witnessing the impact that has had in our communities, right? So I think that the administration and now everything else in between, it just felt like, again, we can just watch, right? Again, we need to do something. But also that something means inviting people to come together, holding a space where that's possible, right? Where people are expressing their ideas through art, but also trying to imagine, well, where do we go from here, right? And maybe even through the space of the exhibition, not only the works are communicating and dialogue with each other, but maybe through the very opening reception, like people are also taking an opportunity to talk to one another as well. But it is a different time. And I think that's also much from the title, right? Hill Block's view. It's like coming together as things fall apart. It's this idea of like, we have to come together. I think we're at a moment that we've been divided, and we've been told that, our differences is what separate us, and I think it's time to shift that mentality. And I think art can do that. I think movements can do that around solidarity and community building. But yeah.
Yeah, I remember I wanted Lucy to go first because she's the one that made Nasty Women happen. For the record, she was like, let's do this thing. I don't want to do it. Like on a Facebook post, made a show of 1,200, like that 1,200 people came to see that shut down the center of downtown New Haven. Yeah. But I'll say about the difference between 2016 and 2024 or 2017 and 2025, because there's the election and then there's the inauguration and then there's the aftermath.
Yeah, right.
I remember, and I'm sure you both do too, the pain of 2016 day after the election. It was silence. People were shocked. Like no one, it was the world stopped in New Haven. Like people couldn't believe it. It was outrageous that this person who's completely unqualified for the job could get the presidential seat. 2024, when it happens again, is a really different feeling.
I think so, yeah.
It's
and like, dude, I don't know if y'all felt this way, but Sarah, you said this thing that stood out to me as I was sort of thinking about the show, and had the chance to walk through it this morning, that we could we could sort of see the landslide coming or feel the gravel shifting beneath our feet a little bit. And I think, I mean, that night is very interesting to me because I remember at one point I woke up really late and I already knew what was happening. And our son woke up at like 3 a.m. And he was so upset. And I picked him up and he was just burning, like he was so hot. I felt like even he knows, like even his little body knows. This is how we like metabolize this moment.
Right.
Someone close to me that works in government said that the feeling within government is defeat. And I feel like that is the word that we're all, it's a place that we're all in emotionally and psychically. And it's different than this, like there was pain and anger and frustration and then a rallying call to show up. And there was a women's march in DC. That didn't happen this year in the same at the same scale. There was a people's march,
I think supposed to be one on March 8th to the opening in New Haven. There's supposed to be happening one in the Green.
That's great.
So we got to keep doing these things, but I think the point being, the defeat comes from recognizing that we live in a country, a nation where our mindset or what we want for ourselves, our core beliefs and values. In this election, by populist vote, we were not part of the majority.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a difference because in 2016, actually Hillary Clinton did get the majority vote. So there was like this sort of silver lining where we could tell ourselves like democracy in the way that the Democrats talk and think about democracy isn't dead. And now it's like the way, it's almost like this rewriting of what democracy means. And like the Republicans won in the sense that they got the popular vote, and for them populism is Trump is king, is the Trump card. So I think like the rallying call for this year's Nasty Women show is like, okay, so we're all feeling defeated. Like, how do we give ourselves a little bit of energy to just show each other what we're doing, what we're going up to, that our values are aligned, that we really care about each other, and to like move to a next step. And it's not for everyone, and it's not right for everyone at this time, because some people still might just want to be in a place of grieving or mourning or sorrow, and that's okay. Which is why the sort of collective space of the show is really important.
Yeah.
It's a show of force. Like
it's a comedy show. I mean, it's as so y'all aren't in the gallery, which is why you have to come if you're listening. But I'm looking at these beautiful T-shirts that have Spanish language sort of scribbled onto them. One of them says, "Listen to me, validate my opinion." One just says no, like no is no, no is no. And that's very moving. There's a Linda Mickens sculpture over in the corner that like you could spend 3 hours with that sculpture alone and then come back and spend 3 more hours with like 1 or 2 of the pieces. So it is very moving. I also want to ask, like, do you feel like in the same way that terminology is constantly changing and shifting, the understanding of like what we need for this moment for folks who are hopefully invested in some way, shape, or form has changed? Because I think that among certain folks on the left, they've realized that like progressives are only going to take them so far, but also that we need to be having conversations about like economic solidarity. And shout out Bernie, who who did and is doing a lot for that. Bernie, we love you here in New Haven. Please come back to the New Haven Green. You'll get a crowd. But I think there is more of an understanding around that within movement building. And I will say like this show to me does not feel overly polemical or reactionary. So I'm wondering, if you like, are you feeling that shift as curators? And I will say, and as like artists and thinkers and creatives yourselves as well, and writers.
I'm thinking.
Thinking
I mean,
good. We love thinking.
We're all humans that evolve. So I don't, like, I think an artist realizes their life to be one of holding a critical mirror up to their own experience. Like as much as that it's about the individualized self, but also the interpersonal self, and then the sort of like social self. So I think that inevitably there's going to be a different flavor to this show than there was 8 years ago. And I think that what we have had more time to do since Trump was elected the first time was to reflect on the ways that the patriarchy shows up in our lives and ourselves. And I think a lot of people, especially white women, have done this work of like anti-racist, anti-bias training, either by choice or by invitation of the workplace that they are a part of, or a religious affiliation, to gain that self-recognition, which is just like this critical step that has been completely by design whitewashed from the history of US culture and ways of being and economic standings, which is that we're built off of a system of enslavement and
stolen land, people on stolen land.
And that is based on this idea that like, well, we just treat people like property. And so that easily becomes something that you can see in your life, like who doesn't have a moment where they feel like something's happening here where I am the subject of someone else's will because for some reason I feel like I owe something to that person, even if they're the person I love the most.
Right.
And that's that feeling that comes back of being like the sort of an inferior person. So like, I think when we can kind of walk through how our workplaces are set up, how our houses are set up, how labor is divided, how roles are assigned, what the expectation is around our capabilities, that are all of those sort of like conditioned stereotypes that are cultural stereotypes, we can see that we're living in it and we might be upholding it in some way. So I think there's a difference there. There's a greater awareness and around like the how we're enacting the system.
And I think people are still like, they're so used to holding on to their power, right?
Yes.
And I think as people continue to hold on to power and want their lives to remain unchanged because, you know, the problem, it's somewhere else. It doesn't impact them or things seem to be fine. It's like that kind of mentality is not going to take us anywhere, right? That's what it continues to separate us. Like, you know, we, you know, there's people that are holding like more jobs and that not able to pay for rent. You know, they're not able to take care of their family. I think there is so much of that it's unequal and it continues to be. But I do think it's about power. You know, this like, you know, people just they want to stay comfortable. You know, they want to feel that they're going to be okay and all they need to care is about their immediate family. And it's like, we need to be able to extend that care to one another. You know, if we don't take care of each other, if we don't understand like how we're withholding these systems, like we're replicating them every day, you know, with small gestures, with in our own institutions, and institutions are just, you know, greatly responsible for that. But every time that we replicate, I mean, and we see that in the arts, right? It doesn't change. So I think about
100%.
in feminism also has been no different as a result, right? So, but how to, again, to hold up to that mirror and look at it like, yes, what have been the pitfalls of our history? What is it that we've done wrong? And what is our role into this movement? You know, and what can we do now? You know, I mean, there are tools, right? We've looked at, and part of the exhibition, right, we have an area where we have books by, you know, Black feminist thinkers, you know, queer thinkers, you know, from not only the United States, but also from the global South, right? Because we're thinking about, you know, this is not a new moment in history, right? This type of like authoritarianism, a possible dictatorship has existed before. So can we look into the history and understand how do people made it through, right? But how it invites us to like, maybe build a new type of society, you know, an alternative way of being and existing with each other, that it does completely, you know, rejects and that collapses like this entire like capitalistic, imperialistic world that many of us have benefited from it and continue to benefit. So I think about that in the show, and that's why it's nice that to see there's such a range of artists bringing their voices as they're thinking about right now, as they're thinking about this, where are we heading, how we're impacted, and what is needed for us to make it through and build something else.
Yeah. Did you want to say something?
Yes, and then democracy has always been a project.
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely,
you know,
absolutely.
Like this is
and so fragile, right?
So fragile.
I think that white people, make the assumption where they're like, but democracy has always been here, which is not true.
Yeah.
And also democracy for who?
Exactly.
Which of course is,
projects always fail. And there's actually a piece behind the screen by Jeff Samba that's a finger puppet that is Doric columns that look much like the front of the White House, which is a neoclassical design based off of ancient Greek architecture and design. And they fall and then come back together, and they fall and come back together. And it's on an old tube TV. It's 25 to 32 pounds, my back would estimate. That is really, it's kind of one of these fun parts of the show, which is like, well, how do you actually deliver the medium? Yeah. The medium is the TV itself, because the mediatization of politics, of the project of democracy, of the power of that person in a leadership position to talk to the people en masse, was exponentially
Yeah.
created once the TV became a thing that became a central part of the living room in the American household. And this is where the idea of the talking head, we're surrounded by talking heads now, comes, because the tube TV was literally a physical manifestation of the life-size head in your room, eventually in color.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
I also want to ask about the role of hope.
Yeah.
Not to sound Pollyanna. So I was thinking about this. So I recently covered this in the ECA Educational Center for the Arts, which we're on Audubon Street. We're right across the street from it.
Yeah.
And they're doing a feminist theater project. So the upper levels, so juniors and seniors, which is great. And so like sometimes I forget that we have this like little conservatory here in New Haven where students are doing work that is so far beyond their years and pretty exceptional. But one of the students and I were talking about how it is like harder depending on the state that I am in now for me to get an abortion than it was for my mom in 1989, which is pretty sobering to think about. And she said to me, I'm really happy to be part of this project. How are we going to get people who need to see this show and think critically about it to see this show? And so is one of your hopes in the role of art as a storyteller, as something that can break down some barriers, that folks will come into the show who maybe feel all sorts of ways about politics? I mean, even if you're talking about like the American left as a concept, that's a huge spectrum of people, right?
Yeah. I can talk first or second. You tell me this. I'm like pretty outspoken. I mean,
I'm a little more like
my gut reaction is I didn't make the show for people that don't want to be inside of it. Like I honestly didn't make, this is not a show about reaching across the aisle for me. Although I am a huge populist at heart. Like I freaking am. From the moment I went into the arts and did studying at a higher educational space, where the director sat me down and she said, Sarah, what are you complaining about? Your thesis is for 50 people. They're going to understand what you're writing. I knew in that moment that the museum track was not right for me. And I love the museum track. Oh my God, I wish I could like not be in my body, because I want to be like I really having nice nails and writing about one person obsessively. Like it sounds lovely. God, I could get so lost in my thoughts. But like, no, it's not my track. And like, so in the same breath, I want to say, like, I am all about reaching across the aisle. Like, I talk to people that I related to, that I am in relationships with, that support Trump and support the right. And I'm not going to stamp out those relationships. And I force myself to be invested and involved and to find that place where I can hold my tongue, listen, and try and understand. And I know it's not for everyone. I don't expect everyone to do it. I feel like it's my responsibilities as me and my flesh and blood and my body and how I was raised to do this work. But this show isn't that. I'm like, come on, Elon Musk is on a doormat in front of the door and everyone please come, but please step in mud before you come into the space. I am calling you to please take a Sharpie marker to that doormat, because it's not for them. Okay, like, sorry.
And I think feminist, and no, I agree with you. And I think feminist art has always had that role, right? And it has also entered in the space of also activism, or naturally has seen it as something that is difficult for people to swallow. And then maybe it shouldn't be easy. You know, we want people to choke up a little bit. And I want them to struggle to understand this work. I want them to be uncomfortable. And I don't think people understand that a space of being uncomfortable is important and is necessary, that allow us to understand, like, well, where is that? What do I feel that? And why? Why am I so uncomfortable? And I think this exhibition, it is for our community, you know, it is for our artists. They're just, you know, really in their studios and trying to think about, you know, like how they're processing this moment. They're thinking about how does that impact me? How does it impact my practice? And is there a space where I can even share this work and these ideas, right? I think as we enter a moment that there's so much censorship around, even in the arts. I mean, we've seen shows being taken down because they were talking about Palestine. So we see shows being taken down because it's talking about abortion. So we are at a moment, and we continue, which is not a new thing, but I think it will get worse. But I think we will need the arts more than ever. We do need it, because this is, you know, right now is an attack of an imagination. And if we cannot imagine anything else, then we're doomed.
Mhm.
So, and this will return to artists, this will return to thinkers, philosophers, existentialists, activists. They are, they've always guided the way for us to think about what is next. And I think the show is for that. It's for that generation. It's for people that right now are wondering, what do I do? Maybe it's from those high school students across the street from CAW, right? That they're making work and they're thinking about, how do I reach? Or maybe it's for an invitation to expand our community, right? That's what I think it's for.
And I also say, like, I fully invite people that voted for Trump to come to the show.
Yeah.
Like, and to question it and to not agree with it. I also really, my hope for in that scenario is that the viewers are generous enough to read some of the wall texts. Like, there's we're all holding this 31-page manifesto, checklist that is first-person narratives that the artists all wrote about their works and their meaning.
And it's beautiful. It really is beautiful.
And I think they took the time to read, and I think people should take the time to read it, and to really sit with these pieces. We have a few videos that I hope people are going to take the time to also listen to them, watch it, and try to understand what's happening. What is the story that I'm being told? I hope they rest in Nadine's space, and look at the work of all these incredible, like, Black feminist thinkers. I hope people sit in a chair, so I hope people talk to each other.
Yeah.
I hope they take an opportunity to come and gather and also laugh, and be happy, because joy is a huge act of resistance. And that we cannot lose that at all.
Yeah. I also, before our time is like flying by, but I want to ask both of you, one thing I ask folks on every episode is, how do you take care of yourselves? Especially in this time. You're both moms. You both have jobs outside of this. You sleep maybe sometimes. I don't know. You're thinkers, writers. You're doing work that is like fairly public facing. How are you caring for your own hearts?
I take hot baths. I think about, like, the writer Sylvia Plath, she said there's nothing that a hot bath can cure. So I like very hot baths. Sometimes I bring a book with me, so I read, and a glass of wine. Sometimes I take it with my partner, a hot bath. So I think moments to be present. I try to stay present in moments with those that I love, those I care about, even with teaching with my students. I think staying present, it's what's been keeping me together.
Like, I watch crappy TV.
We love
I drink too much coffee. No, I have to give a shout out to my partner right now, because I am a bad parent. Like, that's the truth of what I you're great. But how do I take care of myself? I don't let that eat away at me. Do you know what I mean? I'm like doing this thing where I know that right now I'm going to be overworking and then it's going to stop. And so I just am grateful for my partner, and I'm grateful for my child to understand and see me at work.
Yes.
And that's like just the show. I was talking to Nadine Nelson, who was a child. We were both like, the show's for kids. She wants her Soleil to see it. I want Benny to see it.
Yeah,
totally. I also think that I reject the notion of a bad parent. I do think there are bad parents.
Sorry, bad partner. I should frame it like that, because it's about this kind of like.
I think it's like the Sarah Ahmed feminist killjoy that we were talking about before, right? If you are practicing collective action and in solidarity with other folks, including in relationships, like these relationships that are built on love and trust and care.
Yes.
You have to accept that there are weeks or days or months or whatever in which your partner is going to have to step up and take a breath, and you're going to say, like, I'm not going to be home for bedtime. I mean, that was for a multitude of reasons. There were a couple nights this week that I wasn't home for bedtime. And you know what? Shout out Tom Breen. And he had it. And our kid ate more when I wasn't home.
Oh, my thrives when I'm not home.
Yeah.
You know what? When the titties are out of the picture. And so I'm just saying, I think you're an excellent parent and an excellent partner. And it's, yes, I mean, also shout out Laura Sundstrom, who is a New Haven feminist and one of my midwives, who said it's really important for your kids to see you at work.
Yes,
absolutely. And the data, I will also say the data backs that up. We know that kids of working mothers tend to do better.
Yes.
In like socially, emotionally, professionally. And so
I think that's so important, right? You know, we want our kids to see us, and I think that was the reason when I started Nasty Women. It was really because I wanted my children to like feel that like they can do something, right? And it was about I am a mom, I'm an artist, I'm a thinker, I'm an organizer, so that we can be many things, and hopefully by our children seeing that we are many things, that they can think they can be many things. They don't have to be one thing.
I am going to remind people as we wind down that this has been Arts Respond on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. Arts Respond is a collaboration with the Arts Council of Greater New Haven, which happens to be my workplace. I have been here. I'm Lucy Gellman, by the way. I don't know if I did that. I didn't know that last night, y'all. I am here with Sarah Fritchey and Luciana McClure-Lewis. And we have been talking about Hill Block's View coming together when things fall apart. And I, for one, would say that they are falling apart. So you should come see the show. It runs at Creative Arts Workshop, 80 Audubon Street from March 8th through the 22nd of this year. It's organized by Nasty Women Connecticut. If that name doesn't mean something to you, maybe you've been like under a rock. I don't know. But come see the show. It's really good. And there is so much art in here. That surely there will be at least one piece, but I would wager a guess that there will be many pieces that speak to you. I've been and like, if you come and there are certain pieces that offend you, that's okay too.
Yeah. And that there will be also an after party.
Yes,
you know,
Cafe 9.
Shout out to Cafe 9, you know, who's partnering with us, and that we're gonna have DJs. We're gonna have a spoken word poetry. We're even gonna have a tarot reader.
Amazing.
So you know, come see, you know, or predict your future. Come be community. Come party with us. Come resist with us. Come have fun and
yes,
and do it.
Just also tomorrow when the show is opening on March 8th, if you happen to come to the opening from 5 to 8 p.m., correct?
5 to 7.
5 to 7. I'm sorry. I added a whole hour. You can come to the opening. March 8th, of course, is also International Women's Day. There is a protest from ULA, Unidad Latina en Acción, over at what is known now as the Women's Park. It's like the little sort of circle triangle thing of land across from Mezcal in New Haven's East Rock neighborhood. That's beforehand, and then folks are marching over here. So there are lots of things you can do to remember that women still here and should still be celebrated, even if forces are trying to tear us down and make us feel small. I want to thank both of you so much for coming on Arts Respond today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're such a good looker. You really like pay attention to works and get lost in them. So we appreciate you so much.
Oh, I had fun in this show. It's really special.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. And as always, thank you. We've been talking about women because they're the best, but thank you to Harry Droz, who happens to be a man and makes our show possible every single week. Harry, we appreciate you. Have a beautiful weekend, y'all.